right, good morning everybody. Welcome to In Tune. My name's Leon Harrell. I'm live streaming, so I'm going to futz with things as I get set up here. On today's show, we're going to focus on the 12 Days of Christmas is our tune for today. And really what I want to talk about throughout the show is talking about short, goal-directed practice. That's part of our concept of intentional practice, which is what we talk about on the show every week. So if you're new to the show, say hello in the comments. Let me know your name, where you're located. We have people all around the world join the show every week. And if you'll let me know what instruments you play. Most people that join our show play piano, but we certainly can talk about other instruments as well. So in this morning in the chat, I see David. Good morning, David. And I see Dawn in the chat. Good morning, Dawn. And that's all I see at the moment, but we'll probably have some more friends join us. So we're going to jump into our session today. Again, like I said, talking about short guided practice. And I want to talk about using the iPhone version of Piano Marvel. So Piano Marvel is a software you can use to learn to play piano or learn how to read music, which is the main focus of the 1 Minute Music Lesson. And this is a tool that we use for computer-assisted learning, and they've just put out a new iPhone version, so I've been busy sort of testing features of that. And oh, good morning, Carol. I see you in the chat there. So we're going to talk about the iPhone version, but we may switch to the desktop version throughout. Just FYI, there's a desktop version you can use on Windows or Mac, an iPhone version, and an iPad version. I think my favorite's the iPad version, but I tend to use the desktop one the most. But the iPhone one's brand new, so I'm still sort of getting used to it. But you know, we'll explore it as we go. So before we jump into today's lesson, I want to make sure I am touching base with everyone out there. I wanted to ask you, when you practice, do you set a clear goal before you start your practice? And if you do, share with us in the comments what you what kind of goals you focus on. But I'm curious about that because I'm starting a new group piano class in January. And if you want to stay in the loop on that, just visit 1minutemusiclesson.com and you can sign up on our newsletter. And I send out announcements about once a week on that. But we're launching that in January. And in this class, I'm going to limit it to 30 people. We're going to work on all kinds of concepts of intentional practice, primarily for piano. And I want to make sure that I am crafting this course to fit your needs. So again, when you practice, if you sit down with sort of a directed goal, let me know what that goal is in the chat. And if you don't, let me know in the chat that's just something you haven't tried before. Because I'm trying to make sure that this course really fits the needs of people that are attracted to this show. So before we get going, you know, happy holidays, Merry Christmas to everybody. I hope you had a great one. I see a lot of holiday cheer in the comment section this morning. That's good to see always. So we're going to jump into our tune for today. And when we start a new tune, we look at a new tune every week on the show, but what I like to do is always look at our SMART method. So this is our SMART sight reading method. And really, it's a method that I use with intentional practice. Every time I look at a new piece of music, this is the order of things I go through. And I'll start with the scale. So we'll look at the key signature, we'll figure out what's the key, and we'll confirm maybe with some context clues, is that the scale we're playing? Because sometimes that's a mismatch. Then we'll look at the meter, what's the time signature, what's the feel of the music. We'll move into looking for accidentals. Those are the sharps and flats in the piece as far as, you know, what's different from the key signature. We'll take a look at the range so we can know where do we place our hands on the keyboard and where do we need to direct our visual focus. And then we'll finish with the tempo, which is just getting ready to play the song at the tempo that's appropriate for sight reading. Oh, good morning, Sandy. I see you popping in the chat too. The Smart Sight Reading System, we're going to start with the scale, and what we're going to do is load up our iPhone version of Piano Marble. And when you load the app on your iPhone, this is what the home screen looks like. You can go through and set up your settings for the instrument. So if we just tap here on the menu and look at preferences, the iPhone version will work without a keyboard or piano. So you can use the on-screen keyboard to play the tune. And for some reason that's not popping up on my live stream. I'm not sure why. But on my phone here in front of me, I see the choice of 24 keys or 36 keys. I'm going to leave it at 24 because I find that playing it on the phone is good for certain purposes, but I'm too klutzy to use the small keyboard with 36 keys. So I'm going to keep it on 24. And then my instrument settings, I can connect it. If you do have a digital keyboard, you can connect it through a Bluetooth connector. So I use one of those to do that. But I'm going to use my Bluetooth connector primarily. I have found throughout practicing with it this week that using the on-screen iPhone keyboard, like the piano keyboard, is really good if, let's say, it's my lunch break and I just want to squeeze in, 10 minutes of practice, and my focus is learning the notes or practicing the notes on the staff, like where are they at, and getting faster or being more agile at playing the correct note. It's pretty good for that. But I think that it's best for, in Piano Marble they call them like level 1, level 2 songs. These are mostly songs where it's just the melody. It's great for that sort of thing. I don't find that it's great for playing tunes that have chords in them where there's multiple notes played at one time. And the reason for that is to play the chord, I'm having to scrunch my hands so small to play the note on the keyboard. So I'm not enthused about that. It's possible, but I don't think I love that feature for the purpose of playing chords on it. But that's not really the point of what we're looking at today. So what I'm going to do is just type in the search, in the title, 12, the word 12, and my screen's not updating. I think you can just see the home page of this for some reason, so I'm going to test that in just a moment. Let me just switch back out of that and back into here. And bear with me. It's always an adventure when you live stream because you never know what's going to happen. Because it just, it's a relatively new technology. And as always, I'm always adjusting my setup. So if the volume's a little high, a little low, a little choppy, let me know in the comments. I can adjust things on the fly, but I can't, it's hard for me to monitor exactly how you're hearing it on your side. But this morning, we're looking at 12 Days of Christmas, and there are 2 versions of this I found in the app, and I'm just going to limit that just so we'll see those 2. This In Recital Christmas Favorites Level 4, this is a pretty nice arrangement. I'm going to preview that a little bit for you. And just so you can get a feel like if you're interested in that version. This is not the one we're going to practice today, but I want you to get a chance to listen to it.
1, 2, set, go.
All right, and I'll pause it there because that'll just give you a sense of the flavor of it. I kind of like this arrangement because it's got a lot of use of modal harmony. And if you're not aware of what does that mean, oftentimes we'll hear things are major scales, minor scales, but there's actually 7 different what are called modes. And the modes, the additional modes, major is 1, it's the Ionian mode, and minor is 1, that's the Aeolian mode. But the other modes give us different sort of musical flavors, and this one takes advantage of some of those harmonies. So you might be interested in checking that one out. It's not a terribly difficult arrangement, but it's probably a little more difficult than we want to focus on for this morning's practice. So I'm going to switch us to, there's a version that's a level 2, and this is from the collection More Christmas Piano Solos. And I'm going to open that one. And we're going to practice today looking at the chopped. So in Piano Marvel, you can play the whole piece, which is, of course, the whole piece. The chopped, which is the middle option, and this gives us more goal-directed practice. So it's letting us choose what's the section we want to work on, what's the tempo we want to work on, and as we complete them successfully, you'll see the little stars up there in the top right-hand corner light up, which is useful for tracking your progress. I think one thing I like about Piano Marvel the best is that as the person practicing the piano, I can put 100% of my energy into practicing. I don't need to do any kind of tracking or writing things down related to my progress. The tool is doing all that for me. And, that sounds kind of simple and like maybe not useful to you when you think about just the surface level of like, oh, I'm practicing today. I know I'm going to do 15 minutes and I'm going to, work on verse number 1. Like, okay, big deal. But where that becomes a big deal is if you practice, let's say today, but then you get super busy with your job or your family life, and you really can't come back to the piano for 2 weeks. Do you still have that piece of paper where you wrote down what you did last time? Probably not. So the software is tracking everything you're doing over the course of using the product, which I find super useful because if I pick up a tune, especially at the holiday time, and I get distracted and it's been a while since I've come to it, it will remember everything I've done. So I can either quickly refresh myself on what I've done and practice that part again, or I can continue to move forward on the next thing, which is great for your pieces that are more difficult for you, that you're really trying to whittle away and master these pieces. So we're going to focus on the chopped section, and we're going to start with exercise number 1, which is measures 1 through 5. What's really awesome about this piece, 12 Days of Christmas, is that it really only has 3 sections to it. So once you learn the 3 individual sections, which we'll cover today, you really can play the whole piece with no problem, because there's a lot of repetition, of course, when you're singing the different verses about different things. You're actually repeating a lot of the same musical material. So I'm going to choose exercise 1 here. It's verse 1. I'm going to tap the 120 beats per minute, but honestly, I think that's a little fast for sight reading for a lot of people. So just behind me here in the graphic, you can control the tempo with the app. So I'm going to slide that down to about 70 or so, 75 maybe, because I just think that's a better sight reading tempo. So again, for our smart sight reading system, we just want to start with the scale. What scale is this piece in? So we can look at that by the key signature. So right up here by the treble sign at the top and the bass sign at the bottom. There's no sharps or flats there, so there's no key signature, which often means this is in C major, or it could be in A minor. It just kind of depends on the context clues. But for time's sake today, I'll tell you this is C major. And I like to start by just practicing a C major scale before I get going. So I'm going to switch over to my keyboard, and in order to do that really easily, let's just focus on just 1 octave. So I'm going to find middle C on my keyboard, and I'll leave you a little marker just so you can always have that as a point of reference. And I'm going to place a little dice, or you could use a coin or any small object, it doesn't matter. And then another dice on the C and octave above that. And once I've placed my dice, I'm just going to bump them out by 1 key in each direction. And what this is going to do is just give me a visual barrier so that I'm not paying any attention to the rest of the keyboard. I'm only going to pay attention to this part. Okay? And normally on this show I talk a lot about, I'm not a real stickler about what fingers you use to play the piano, but today I did want to teach you what's the proper fingering for the C major scale. So it's pretty simple, but where people get tripped up is how do we cross over When we play the first 3 notes with fingers 1 on the thumb, 2 on the pointer finger, 3 on the middle finger, then we cross under our thumb under finger 3, and then we'll continue the scale. So I'm going to show that to you so you can see what I'm talking about. So we're going to place our thumb on middle C. So we'll play 1, 2, 3. So fingers 1, 2, 3. And then our thumb is going to come under and then play the F key. All right, so once we play F, we're moving our hand over, and then we'll continue up the scale. 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to repeat that so you can try it with me. All right? All right, so thumb on middle C, 1, 2 on D, 3 on E. All right, bring your thumb under and press the F key. And once you press it, swing your hand over. Finger 2 on G, 3 on A, 4 on B, and 5 on C. All right? So let me know in the comments, is that challenging for you? Is that a skill you've already mastered? Let me know either way in the chat. I'll give you a moment to chat back just so we can have a chance to interact. And I'm going to play this a couple times kind of slowly so that when you watch this back on the replay, you can practice along very seamlessly with what I'm doing. So while you're chatting, I'm going to practice that a couple times. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. All right, this time I'll do it with numbers. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, and this time silently. Okay, great. So that's got us warmed up. Let's take a look at the chat here. David says, I've got that, but struggle with more than 1 octave. Okay, well, that's a good point. So when you're doing this we're looking at this just 1 octave from 1 C to the next C above it. That's an octave or 8 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If we're doing more than 1 octave, I'm going to drop this dice down an octave, and we'll start down here. The pattern's exactly the same, except where we move into the 2nd octave. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So instead of our pinky on the top note here, we're going to cross our finger under again. So the C comes back, the thumb comes back to C, and then we'll repeat 1, 2, 3, thumb under, 1, 2, 3, 4. And whenever we get to the top, meaning we're not going to play any more above that, the dice we've put down, that'll be the pinky. All right, so I can tell you as a student when I was learning these things, you'll go through a couple stages of learning. You'll start primarily with your right hand. Most teachers will teach starting with the right because most people are right-handed, which is why the method starts that way. If you're left-handed, left hand may be easier for you when you start. But what I recommend you do is take any kind of object, again, coins or dice, something small, and we're going to put some visual reminders on the keyboard. So I'm going to put a pointer on F, a pointer on C, and pardon, I've got 2 more right here, and another one on F, and I will not put one on the top C because we're not going to change our finger there. So as I do it this time, you can do it with me 2 octaves. All right. All right, and David says, great, but I get lost on the way down. And the pointers are really great for this as you're getting used to it. So your fingers do the same thing coming down, but the difference coming down is that our fingers that cross over the top instead of our thumb goes under. Thumbs always go under because it's almost impossible to bring your thumb over your other fingers, and that the rest of the fingers come back, okay, or go over the top. So watch me as I do it, and I'll talk through it. Everywhere you see a pointer is where a crossover is going to happen, okay? When we go up the scale, the thumb comes under. When we come down the scale, whatever finger we need to use is coming over top. So we start with the thumb. So it's 1, 2, 3. And then the thumb under everywhere you see a red pointer. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now David says, I struggle when I come back down. And most people do, because you have to be very aware you are asking your brain to do so much when you play piano. That's why piano is a great exercise if you want to sort of improve the quality of your thinking or the quality of your focus, because it's a fantastic brain exercise. So you'll start on finger 5 at the top, or the pinky, and the crossovers happen at the same spot, but the thumb is always going to play where the red pointers are. So you'll understand when we get there. So we'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now we cross over to finger 3 on the E. 3, 2, 1, because the thumb always lands where the red pointers are. We cross over again, and how do we know? Is this going to be finger 3 or finger 4? Well, there's 4 notes left to play until the red pointer. So we're going to start on finger 4. 4, 3, 2, 1, so that the thumb always lands on the red pointer. And then we continue. There's 3 more notes left. So we're going to cross over finger 3. 3, 2, 1. So if you want to try that with me, this will be our last time doing the scale, and we'll jump into the rest of the piece. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And coming down, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. Okay, great. And then David says, brilliant. So I find that nearly anything you struggle with to learn in piano or other instruments, the same concepts apply to other instruments, you're really trying to always focus on the conservation of a visual information or conservation of movement. So playing a scale this way, the fingers, we're conserving the movement. We want to always make sure we're doing the correct finger. And by doing the correct finger, what you're actually doing is limiting how far each finger has to move. So the less the hand moves, the more smoothly you can play a piano. And I mean, same for guitar or trombone or whatever you're playing. The less your body moves, the smoother you can actually do the instrument. The visual information, conserving the visual information, by putting these pointers and these dice on the keyboard, there's nothing else to focus on. So you're only focusing on the things that make a difference for this particular exercise. Okay, so we've warmed up with our C major scale. For the rest of our SMART system, we're going to look at the meter. So in the 12 Days of Christmas, it's important to note that the piece starts in 4/4, so that just means 4 on the top means there's 4 beats in a measure. And the 4 on the bottom tells us what kind of note value is a beat, because that can be different. It's not always a quarter note, or I think they call that a quaver in Britain, or crotchet. I'm always rusty on the British system. So on the bottom, you'll see the first note's a quarter note there on the word on. The bottom 4 is telling us that we're going to play 4 of the quarter note. So if we imagine the bottom number, whatever it is, it could be an 8, it could be a 16, it could be a 2, it could be a number 1. Imagine it like a fraction. So it's 1 over the bottom number, which is 4. So 1 over 4 is a fourth. So that's a fourth of a circle. A fourth of a circle is a quarter. So it's a quarter note. This time signature tells us there are 4 quarter notes in every measure. As you scan through this piece, you will notice in measure 13, the time signature changes. So now we've got 2 beats in a measure, but the number 4 is on the bottom, so the beat is still a quarter note. And that's good because it's easy to change time signatures as long as the bottom number doesn't change. If the bottom number changes, it gets more challenging. We may have something called a metric modulation. Carol is asking or saying, agree. What a great and simple system. Love it. Thank you. And Sandy agrees as well. Great. I didn't know that. Excellent. So it's always good to know that I'm able to share something that's very helpful to you, which is good. Okay, so our meter is going to change. We have 4, 4, which we count 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2, 4, which we'll count 1, 2. But I don't think we're going to have a lot of other rhythmic values to have to wrestle with. For the rest of the system, our accidentals, I like to scan through the whole piece before I sight read anything, just to see, what am I about to be faced with. So if I continue scanning through this piece, and let me just switch, I'm going to switch this to the whole mode so it doesn't gray out anything. As I scan through this piece, and I've already done that this morning, I only found 1 accidental in the piece. And it happens when we get to the 5 golden rings. It's somewhere in that section. So right here in measure 59, you'll notice there's an F sharp. And that repeats throughout the piece. We'll see a lot more of that. But we're basically going to switch between an F on the keyboard and an F sharp. So we're going to toggle between the two. So when you're sight reading, especially, or just practicing, it doesn't matter if you think of it as sight reading, I want you to try to visualize that there are 7 levers, and I came up with this idea from the pedal harp. I don't know if you know what a pedal harp is, but it just means that on the harp there are 7 pedals, and when you press the pedal, it changes the length of the string, which changes the note that when you pluck the string it sounds like. Well, the piano doesn't quite work that way, but the concept can work very similarly. So let's imagine that this pointer, this red pointer, is a lever. And when we see an F sharp, we're just twisting the lever a little bit to the right. So in your mind, and you can even use your body to do this, just kind of lean to the right. My camera's reversed, so you would be leaning to the right. And all we're doing is really leaning our finger to the right. All right, so when you see a sharp in your music, think lean to the right. When you see a flat, think lean to the left. So you might see an F flat, and I mean that's totally possible in music. You won't find it in beginner music, but you will definitely find it in later music, especially music of Debussy and French Impressionist composers. Will explore keys that use that a lot. But the point of the story, when you see a sharp, imagine your body leans to the right and your finger leans to the right, and it will be a lot easier to sight read them. Okay, so we'll move that out of the way for now. All right, so that's our accidentals. The rest of the system, we look at the range and the tempo. So the range of this piece is very small. This is listed as a level 2 in Piano Marvel, and I'm just going to scroll back to the beginning. The lowest note you will find in the piece is measure 5. The note comes back a lot, but this is an F just below middle C. So I'll switch to the keyboard and show you that in just a moment. And then the highest note
1030
is going to be measure 5, right above that on Partridge in the right hand, you'll see an A above middle C. So let's look at our keyboard, and we're going to rearrange our dice. Our lowest note is F, and our highest note is A. All right, so once we've placed our dice, I'm just going to bump them out by 1. So these are going to act as like our bumpers. Like imagine we're at the bowling lane and we just put up our bumpers so that we're not going to strike, we're not going to go in the gutter. All right, so we're going to leave our dice there as we look at things. Okay. All right, now I'm going to switch back to our music. All right, and we're going to sight read using our practice guide. We're going to go into chopped verse 1. Again, it says 120 beats a minute. I'm going to drop that to 79. I think that's a more comfortable tempo. Okay. And before we sight read, Piano Marble has 2 different modes, prepare mode and play mode. And I failed to mention, if you want to play along with us every week, visit my website, 1minutemusiclesson.com/toolbox. You'll see a link to download Piano Marble, and you can try that free for 30 days. If you do decide to continue using it, make sure you use our affiliate code because you'll get a 20% discount off your monthly subscription, which that would save you a lot if you decide to use it in an ongoing basis. But Piano Marble has 2 modes. On the desktop and iPad version, these are called the Prepare mode and the Assess mode. On the iPhone, they've changed it to be called Prep mode and Play mode. So we're going to do this in Prep mode, which just means you're controlling the software's forward motion. So it's not going to leave you in the dust. So that's good for your first time sight reading through something. So we're going to do it in Play mode. I'll hit the play button. It's going to show a piano on the screen. I don't know if it's going to actually show you what I'm playing or not. I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to scoop my head out of the way over here. And maybe you can see the keyboard as we play. I don't know if it'll do that or not. But hands on the keyboard, I'm just going to start with finger 4 on the G, which is our ring finger on the G. And then I'm going to go ahead and get my right hand ready, looking at the keyboard. In measure 3, we're going to be playing a D with finger 1. So I'll show you what that looks like. So I've got finger 2 on G and finger, let's see, that said finger 1 on D. So thumb on D. All right. So if we get our 2 fingers ready, we're just in position to be able to read the notes. And I mean, honestly, all this is telling us is take all your fingers and put them evenly on all the notes, but just put both your thumbs on middle C. So you'll be in the correct position to play everything already. Okay, so here we go. We're going to do this kind of slowly. So I'll count 2 measures. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and it'll stop there. Okay, so one thing you'll notice about the iPhone version, we'll hit prepare again. The way the product scrolls from left to right, every time you press a note, the music scrolls to the next note. And that's probably really good for you if you're a relatively beginning level music reader and you need the assistance to stay focused on where should my eye be looking. I can't say that I love that feature about it. It's a little bit better in the play mode. In the play mode, it doesn't move on every note, I don't think, but we'll see in a moment. But in the prepare mode or the prep mode, it moves every note. So let me know in the comments. Take a moment and just give me some feedback on that. You know, I've been playing the piano since I was 5. I just turned 40 this year. So, I mean, I'm certainly biased in a lot of ways. But if you're a brand new learner or a relatively new learner, or maybe you're just returning to learning the piano, it's been years since you've done it, Let me know if you like that feature, because if you do, I'll find some creative ways to teach with that. But if you really don't, let me know. If you're unsure and just say, I don't know, I'm not sure yet, let me know. So let's try it one more time, and then we'll move on to the next section. Okay, so hands on the keyboard. If you just start with your thumbs on middle C, all right, thumb on middle C, and then just fan the fingers back out. You'll notice they just fall right into place, and every note is covered. Alternatively, we could shift our hand up one note on the right hand, and then every note's covered. So really, in piano music, when they tell you what finger to play, it's not that that's a right or a wrong. It's really just a suggestion to tell you this is the most efficient way to play the piece. But that doesn't mean it has to be that way or that every pianist would play it that way. Okay, so we'll try it one more time, and then we'll do the next section. So here we go, hands on the keyboard, or clapping along. If you don't have a keyboard, just clap along the rhythm with me. All right, so we're focusing on counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and then it'll stop there. Okay, so verse 1, which is what we just played, that same material repeats verses 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's almost exactly the same music, so you're good to go on that. Let's look at the practice guide, and now let's go to verse 5, which is exercise number 3, and I'll do that. Again, I'm going to bump the tempo down. I just think 120 is too fast for sight reading for a lot of people. So again, 75 is a pretty good sweet spot to start with. This verse has a lot of similarity to it, but we're going to get this part of the song where it says 5 golden rings, and that's where that F sharp was. So we'll take a look at that, and we're also going to have the change of our time signature happen at that spot. So if you're a person that's wanting to learn to read music and you're wanting a very systematic way to do it, I recommend you check out my book. I have a book on how to read music, and I'll throw a link up on the screen. The book's called How to Read Music Easily in 30 Days. And I've designed this book for adult learners who really need more of an exponential learning sort of approach. And what I mean by that is, let me switch back over to my main camera. What I mean by that is when you start out learning, you want to learn really simple and basic stuff so you can understand some fundamentals. So my approach in my book is I start with a staff with just one line. So we focus on how to count a rhythm on just one line instead of all 5 lines of the staff. And then, I'll take you through the first 10 days, very slowly adding one more line to the staff and learning some new information. And then we get into, what are the challenges of counting rhythm? This rhythm is what everybody struggles with. So what's the difference between a compound meter and a simple meter, and why is that important? Because that's really what trips up a lot of people. And then the end of the book talks about a lot of advanced type of things that most teachers won't cover for years, but I think it's better to know them up front. So for instance, the sort of lever technique we talked about, I talk about the anchor line technique, which is a way of visually focusing on reading music, etc. So again, if you're interested in that, you can check it out, 1 Minute Music Lesson /book, and you can learn all about that. So when we're looking at verse number 5 here, pay attention at 5 golden rings. That's where the F sharp's going to come back. So we're going to do it in prep mode. All right, hands in the same position. All right, and we're focusing on, let's focus on saying the note names. So when you practice, you may have more trouble knowing where are the notes on the keyboard, or you may have more trouble counting. Or you may have trouble, maybe you've got both those kind of down pat, but your trouble is coordinating the two hands together. If your trouble is coordinating the two hands, stay focused on counting. If your trouble is, I really can't read the notes fast enough, or I sort of misread the notes sometimes, stay focused on saying the notes out loud. And this time, and rather than playing the keyboard, just say them out loud. That's what I'm going to do this time. So I'm going to say the names of the melody note, the top note that we're playing. Okay, here we go. Hands on the keyboard if you're doing that, or getting ready to say the notes if you're doing that. And 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. G, 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 C, 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 B, C, D, E, F, D, E, G, A, F sharp, G, G, F, E, D, C, F, A, C, D, C, B, A, G, E, F, G, A, F, E, C, D, C. And you may have noticed when we read through that the melody note moves from the bass clef, the bottom line, staff, to the top staff, to the treble staff. That's really common in music that is arranged for beginning piano, because they want to start to teach you the idea of coordinating the two hands, but you may not be ready to read multiple notes at a time. So in most piano music, you'll find the right hand plays the melody exclusively. As you get into more advanced piano music, you'll have the left hand play the melody sometimes while the right hand does something kind of flashy up top. But beginning piano music splits the melody between the two hands so that you have a little bit of something to work with each hand, but your brain, you're thinking through this song, 12 Days of Christmas, everybody knows that song. What they're trying to do is strip away the things that make it easier for the things that you already know, like this melody, so let's break the melody into two hands so you have a chance to work with both hands. So you'll find that when you play a lot of level 1 and 2 stuff in Piano Marble. Sandy says, I like singing the notes. That's where I'm at. Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. I mean, maybe it's not funny, but so I used to teach music at, I've taught at many colleges throughout the Midwest. But I taught a graduate course for students that had an undergraduate music degree, and this was their first or second year in graduate school for music. And you would be shocked at the number of people that have studied and studied and studied, and they struggle to sight read because they just had never thought to practice it broken apart. Like they were just imposing these rules on themselves, like it all had to be done together, all in unison and coordinated, and that was why they could never do it, And the course I taught was oral skills, like how do you listen to music and write it down on paper, or how do you read music with just the paper and no piano and sing it correctly. So to do that, I had to teach people all these sort of different approaches, which is how I came up with a lot of this stuff. So yeah, thanks, Sandy. That's good feedback. I find a lot of people it never occurs to them separate the elements, and it makes it easier to master some of it. Okay, so we've looked at section 2. Let's do that one more time just for a chance to practice it. And this time I'm going to count it. Okay, so hands on your keyboard. All right, and we'll count to 4. And you'll notice I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this first measure, I'm just counting 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. You can do this lots of ways. Technically, this music is starting on beat 3 and 4. So we could say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and then start playing 3, 4. Most people would say that. I'm just going to stick with what I'm doing. I'm just counting an incomplete measure. And part of the reason I'm doing that is we're about to switch meters into 2/4. So I'm just preparing you to be flexible in the counting. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we went a little bit faster that time. So if you decide to watch it back on the replay, YouTube has a little thing probably right about here somewhere below that will let you slow down the speed. So you could drop this down as much as 25% of the speed of what we just did. And when you sight read, I definitely recommend you sight read at a speed that's comfortable to you, because sight reading faster than you're comfortable with, there's no value to it. Oftentimes, all it will do is make us more anxious at the keyboard. It will reinforce a belief that, oh, we just can't do this. And you don't get any motivation from doing it, because you constantly experience that feeling of failure. So using the Smart Sight Reading System and sort of the methods I'm walking through, you start to eliminate all those mental boundaries, and suddenly you start to improve quite a bit. Let's look at our third section of the piece. And as I'm loading that up, let me know in the comments if there's anything in particular you struggled with in that second section. And we'll cover that concept if there's something sticking out for you. We're going to look at exercise number 4. This is verse 6. And verse 6 is really the rest of the music. This is where we start to see that 2/4 time signature pop in. So you'll notice it at measure 74 when we have 6 ghisalaying, etc. So every time we have the verse part where they're talking about the number of things, numbers 6 through 12, those are in 2/4. And you'll notice when you sing the song, it seems like you're moving through that quicker, because you are. There's less beats in every measure. And then 5 golden rings is longer. It switches us back to 4/4, where the rest of the music was in 4/4. So as we count this, the counting is still relatively simple. We'll start on measure 1 here. I'm just counting 1, 2 on the 6th day of Christmas, and then we're counting 1, 2, 3, 4 for every measure. But once we get to the 2/4 section, we're just counting 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, and then we'll switch back into 4/4. 1, 2, 3, 4 on 5 golden rings. Okay? So again, I'm focusing on the counting because this piece is good for that sort of thing. But if you want to focus on saying the letters or just clapping the rhythm, if you don't have a keyboard today, do that. Any kind of practice is good practice when it's intentional. Okay, so let's do our prepare mode. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. And it'll pop up telling us how we did there. So one thing I want to mention, if you're like me when you're sight reading, especially if you're sort of in these earlier stages of learning, one thing you might be feeling is that sense of anxiety or dread, because you might start out sight reading pretty well because you take the time to get your hand in the right spot. You take your time to think through the tempo and do it at a speed you can do, and you do really well until about 4 to 5 measures in. And then you start to feel like, ooh, this is getting hard. Oh, what's that note? Oh, where should my hand be? And like you just start to lose focus in your mind. So I find that counting music the way we're doing together this morning, it requires a certain discipline. And I don't mean discipline like, oh, push through and just do it. I more mean a discipline of like a mindfulness practice, or, the discipline of meditation, where you're deciding, I'm going to do this exercise and I'm going to follow the method of whatever it is you're trying to do. But if things don't go well, I'm going to be okay with that, because it's not necessarily about it being good or bad or neutral. It's just, I'm here in the present moment. I'm doing the exercise. And ultimately, when that feeling of dread comes up about the sight reading, you can't get rid of that until you accept that it's going to happen every time. The more you fight it, the more it's there. So you have to really get to a place of acceptance with it. And when you do get to a place of acceptance with it, it is shocking how quickly it can begin to fade away, which is, that's my experience. I can't speak for everybody, but that's certainly something I found when I finally got better at sight reading. And I wasn't good at sight reading. It took me 20 years to come to that realization, because no one told me, or if they told me, I wasn't ready to learn the lesson. that happens in life too. But we're going to look at this last section again. I want to focus your attention on measure, I'm just going to bring that up on the screen, measure 77 through 79. Take your time and work through that one. If you look in your practice guide at the minced version, let's see, where's that going to be? 5 through 9. Well, I'm not sure. I couldn't find that quickly. But we're going to look 78, 9. I'm just going to have you focus on these two measures, because I know that it's very tempting for this section to be difficult. So we're just going to refocus our energy on the keyboard, placing our dice on the lowest note, which is going to be B on the word rings, and the highest note, which is A, for the word gold. And I'm just going to bump them out by 1. Okay? All right, and we're going to focus on just measure 77 through 79. So we'll do that slowly. All right, and I'm going to play it on the keyboard rather than show you the sheet music, just so you can follow along. All right? So we'll do this very slowly, because this is going to be the most challenging part if you have, if coordination is a challenge for you. Okay, so we've got 5 gold, or golden, if you say that in your version, rings. All right, so I'm going to do that slowly. C-E-G for the word 5. 5. C-D-A for gold. Golden, the F sharp on the second syllable. That's not really the lyrics to the song, but I say golden. And then rings, B, D, and G. So let's do that a couple times slowly. Watch me do it. 5 golden rings. And I'll do it again. 5 golden rings. And let's do it one last time for good measure. 5 golden rings. That's going to be a tricky spot for a lot of people. The other thing that's going to be tricky for many people is going to be measures 81 and 80. Yeah, basically 81 through 84, anytime this passage comes back in the piece. And the reason it's tricky is the melody is jumping from the left hand to the right hand, to the left hand to the right hand. So, I mean, we're asking our brain to do a lot of gymnastics here. So I'm going to do that slowly on the keyboard. So the passage starts with 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, I'll move this dice, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree. All right, and I'm not going to repeat that for time's sake, but on the replay you can watch that slowly if you want to see it on the keyboard. And hopefully next week I'll have my keyboard set up where we can kind of do it all in one shot here. So we've covered everything in the piece. The only thing I'll point your attention to in the practice guide, if we jump to the very end, verse 12 and the outro, I don't think that's any different, but let's do scan it together. No, nothing's different. Maybe the very tail end of the piece, there's, I'm covering it. There's a couple extra notes that are different, but I think you can handle that on your own at this point. Okay, so that covers the 12 Days of Christmas from Piano Marvel. If you liked today's episode and sort of the approach we took, give it a thumbs up. That lets me know that you liked it, and that helps me out on YouTube as far as like telling the YouTube algorithm, oh, people like this. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. That way you'll get updates whenever we post new videos. In the new year, I want to start posting more videos in the middle of the week versus just Saturday. And do take the time to ring the bell. Again, I always tell people, I think that bell was so stupid. I never understood its purpose until I started live streaming, and that's what it's for. If you follow someone who's a live streamer, ring the bell, because when they go live, it tells you they're live. And for me in particular, I want to start doing more live streams in the middle of the week, but I don't want to email the list every time I do that. So if you haven't, ring the bell so you'll get the notification. Just to end the show, I like to always say a special thank you to our patrons. Our patrons are really what help us make our mission possible. So our mission here at the 1 Minute Music Lesson is to help the world learn music literacy skills, which is really what we're learning on this show, sight reading and all the different skills of music literacy. So thank you so much, patrons. That means the world to me. And if you want to learn more about how you could support the channel, either financially or other ways, there's lots of other ways. Visit 1minutemusiclesson.com/support. Okay, that's going to be it for today. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm launching a group piano class in January. If you want to stay sort of in tune with what we're doing with that, go to 1minutemusiclesson.com and just sign up for the newsletter. I don't bombard people with, generally it's 1 email a week, and then I let people know on Saturday morning, oh, we're about to go live. But if you'll sign up for that newsletter, I'll give you the details of that. I don't have a firm starting date, but we are launching in January. And again, that's only going to be for 30 people for our first class, because I don't want too many people. I want to make sure it's a small enough group to get a lot of value out of the course. Okay, so that's going to be it for today. If you guys have questions or comments, throw them in the chat before you leave, and we'll tackle those. If you have questions throughout the week, if you're watching this on the replay, just put them in the comments below.
11 o'clock.
We'll address those throughout the week, or we'll catch you on the next live episode and answer your question. I don't have any questions from today's mailbag, but if during the week you do have a question, you can always send it to our mailbag. If you have a question, maybe you want to send a picture of some music with some handwritten notes or something, you can do it that way. But that's going to be it for today. Thank you guys so much for joining me on In Tune every Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Time, which is Chicago time. I'm Leon Harrell, and this has been another episode of In Tune. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you all so much for coming. Thanks, Carol and Sandy and David and Don. I'll see you all next go round. Have a good one. Bye-bye.